It is utterly insane to me that we are going onto week 5 of Inktober starting tomorrow, and that we've completed week 4. Genuinely, how crazy is that? I feel like this challenge has gone so fast and so slowly all at once. I have whiplash. But either way, hi, hello, my name is Taddy. I am a small artist here on YouTube, and I have been making art videos for most of my adolescence and then put it back behind me before coming back now. I just do it for fun, and I love sharing characters and stories and artwork that is correlated to the characters and stories and lore that I have with my dear friend Candiii. And if you don't know, as per every year, Candiii and I have been doing this version of OCtober and Inktober called Cattober, which consists of a list of prompts divided throughout the month of October with 31 different prompts where we draw our characters every single day. So we are back here and we are starting with day 20, Eerie. Now, I actually wanted to put this specific prompt on this specific day because I wanted to draw the character that you are seeing on screen, who is Lunia Myashnikov, also known as Alexei Alexandrovich Myashnikov. Now, I know that many of you, if you are familiar with this channel from when I was a lot younger, might have no idea who this character is, but you might be familiar with the name Alexei or Lessa, and that is because Lessa used to be a character that appeared on this channel a lot, and this character, Lunia Myashnikov, is actually part of Lessa's ancestry. He is Lessa's grandfather by 5 generations, and as you can see, he looks very much like him, but they are very different people. The reason why I decided to draw Lunia for this prompt specifically is because October 20th is actually Lunia's birthday. So Candiii and I decided to use a word and a prompt that would fit him, and for that very reason, we decided to draw him in his quote-unquote natural habitat, which is the battlefield. Now, Lunia was actually born in 1823, so we're talking about well over 200 years ago, and he is born in a family line that is slowly declining. You could say that he is from befallen nobility, and for that very reason, he wants to try and save face and name, not necessarily for his own family name, not for his father or for his parents, but more so because he wishes to protect himself and his twin sister, whom he doesn't want to see married off to someone else, just to some sort of person that wants to feed off their name and fortune. Well, past fortunes. It's mostly social fortune at this point in time. So Lunia becomes a member of the royal army, and he actually becomes well known and feared due to an ability that he has, which we call the mist. You're gonna see it in the coloring process. This mist is a warm, or should I say scorching hot type of smoke or lava, magma type of substance that can burn in a way similar to acid through most surfaces. And this is passed down through generations, from mothers to sons, or from sons to daughters and sons to their own children, and so on. And it is usually accompanied by a fiend, which is a creature that is there and somewhat takes over the person's psyche if they aren't really strong enough to handle it. And Lunia is one of the people in Lessa's family to inherit this mist, which you're seeing on screen right now, and who uses it to his advantage in more ways than one, because he of course uses it in the way of actually making the best use of it on the battlefield. And that is actually why, even though when he presents himself to the army, he's very young and people don't know of him, they allow him to participate in their campaigns and they allow him to be part of the army to begin with, because they actually see that he has this incredibly useful power that could be used to basically blow away enemy lines and thus have the battles last less and have an ending to the wars that they are fighting be more approachable and near compared to when they first started fighting before he got there and he joined the army. Now, another thing about Lunia, which is going to be pretty funny considering he is one of Lessa's ancestors, is the fact that he didn't plan on having any children. He didn't plan on having his line continue. He didn't wish to have a family, and this is mostly just because he does have a very bad relationship with his own parents and his own family. It's mostly just because he feels like his entire existence is based around having to fix the sins of the parents, and so in his head, he just doesn't think it's the right idea to force children to deal with the situation that they've caused. But this all changes after he meets the person that he ends up with, and he decides that it is all right for him to continue the family as long as he can somewhat be of use to both this person, their child, and their family line, because Lunia actually finds a young man by the name of Dorothée, and Dorothée is immediately taken with Lunia. He's actually the one that does the first step and speaks to him and tries to get his attention at one of the many events that they both attend. And for this very reason, Lunia at first is a little suspicious because he thinks that Dorothée is just trying to play around with him, especially considering the fact that they are, of course, two males and the time period is not necessarily the best for that type of thing to happen. But Dorothée is insistent, thank God, and Lunia ends up absolutely opening up to him, and in the end, under the pressure of his own mother, he ends up also marrying another person. So he ends up marrying a woman so that they both him and his wife can then pursue their real lovers and also have the quote-unquote heirs to what they need. He mostly has a very good relationship with this young woman who goes by the name of Marfa. She's absolutely lovely. They both really like each other as friends. He protects her and thinks of her as a younger sister. And Marfa thinks that both Lunia and Dorothée are absolutely delightful to be around. But of course, he doesn't like her romantically, and neither does she. So they end up basically just helping one another, favoring one another in every other possible way, but not in the romantic sense of the word, not in the romantic aspect, because in fact Marfa does also agree and accept to have the hair that Lunia needs with Lunia, so for them to have a child together. But she also makes it really clear that that is not her wish. Motherhood is not something that she wants to pursue, and that is also extremely respected, because even though they are in a time period that is different from ours, they at least have the decency to not enforce anything that Marfa doesn't want to do. And of course, she does the same to them. She is willing to put up the front of the wife, the front of the, basically the role that women had been forced into for most of their lifetimes, especially back in the day. So the role of the devoting wife and mother, even if it's just for a little bit, before she then can just be free and be with whoever she wants, because Lunia, having always had a strong connection to his own sister, having wanted to save her from unhappy marriage or from anybody just preying on her, older men or whoever it was that would have wished to marry her, absolutely understands Marfa's position, and if anything wants to help her achieve stability, and the two of them basically remain in contact and have a pretty good and based relationship. It's very equal, and neither one expects too much than what they've agreed on from the other. And I think that Though I am not doing the best job at explaining the dynamic between Dorothée, who is Lunia's actual lover and who also is incredibly nice to Marfa, and Marfa's incredibly nice to him, like there is no rivalry between the two. There is just a desire on my part and on Candii's part to show this type of relation as something that is incredibly respectful and loving, because I feel like in a lot of stories, especially romances, the role of female characters and women in general is often just reduced to a supporting character, but more often than not a supporting villain. Like she is trying to get between the two male characters in the story or something, and I feel like that is so reductive, and it is no different than the way that women are portrayed as just some sort of object or something to use. So we really wanted to show this type of dynamic where, first of all, Lunia and her are absolutely both okay with what is going on, and they both sit down and are absolutely agreeing. And most of all, Lunia would want her to feel safe, and even so, when the decision of having a child is taken, they are all agreeing and they are all respecting whatever it is that she wishes to do. Because to be fair, I do believe it's important when there's stories that of course have elements because of drama and because, you know, they need some sort of spice to go on, and by spice I mean, like, you know, adding elements to the plot rather than anything else. I do believe it's important to like not always use the same cliches. It's like, I know that cliches work for a reason, we're used to them and they make a story more interesting, but I do think it's important sometimes to take a trope or cliche and kind of turn it around, and that's what we wanted to do. So I wanted Lunia to be somebody who is actually scared of relationships to begin with, that doesn't really want to engage in one, and when he does and he has to face different types of relationships, he's actually incredibly kind to all of those around him. Now going to day 21, Fate. This is actually a character that I hadn't drawn for this challenge yet, and this is actually the first illustration that I do of this character on a larger scale, because the only illustration I had ever done of Arilla was an illustration that I used for a TikTok. I'm gonna put it here, but even there she's not necessarily the focus of it. I was redrawing a painting of her showing her little baby child, and of course I'm showing you this picture because this prompt in itself shows her pregnant with her little boy, Prince Christopher of Ilvacar, and I am sure you're going to remember this name if you've watched the other videos, because he has been one of the characters that has come up in the other prompts. At first, I wasn't sure if I was going to draw Queen Arilla of Ilvacar, but then I decided to do it just because, kind of going back onto the topic I was talking about before, where I want to have characters and I want to show the female characters for more than just supporting elements within the stories. I wanted to show Arilla as more than just Christopher's mother, and that is because she is, of course, the former queen of Ilvacar, meaning that now she is no longer there, unfortunately, and so the throne for the queen is vacant, but she is the king of Ilvacar's second wife, and she comes from one of the most important families within the kingdom, which is the family or the house of Barian, and she is actually very much involved within the politics of the world. She marries the king because she is very young and she has ideas of him as a sort of Prince Charming character. She believes the current king to be an absolute perfect match for her, and he does manipulate her into believing this until she then realizes that he's an absolute tyrant and an absolute bigot. So she, of course, feels trapped within her own castle and her own kingdom. But she does very much have hope for her child, and she is, of course, not just somebody's wife or somebody's mother. She is a person with all of her desires and all of her wishes well before she became Christopher's mother or Bancroft's wife. But I wanted to show something that mixed two elements of her. I didn't want to show her with her wedding ring or with the idea of being the king's wife. I wanted her to be just herself with her thoughts and her ideas even related to politics, and her belly with her baby, because both of these elements are extremely important to her. She is very loving and very happy to be a mother, but she is also very certain of what to do in terms of politics and what is good for her kingdom. So even though she is, of course, mistreated by the husband that she unfortunately chose, she believes greatly that her child, in this case she has no idea whether or not it's going to be a boy or a girl, of course, but within Ilvikar it actually doesn't matter. The rule of succession is not determined by the gender of the baby, so whether it would have been another queen or another king, it wouldn't have mattered. But she is basically thinking to herself and thinking that no matter what happens, no matter what the situation is, she is going to raise this child with the right ideals and with the right ideas in mind, so that they can do whatever they can to keep people from basically becoming the way that the king is. And what I wanted to show was the passage from how she used to be, so carefree and perhaps a little bit too innocent because she believed the current king's lies, to someone who is very deep in thought and very connected to her own opinions and ideas, while also still being not unhappy with the fact that she is having a baby. I wanted her to look like she knows what she is doing. I think that she knows that the reason why the baby that she is carrying is a royal to begin with is because of her side of the family, and this is because, like I said, she comes from the Baryon line, which used to be the ruling house in Ilvikar to begin with before the current rule. And so one thing that makes her and her husband actually fight a lot is the fact that she will use it against him and tell him that no matter how much of an ogre or a brute he becomes, it is actually her family line that gives their child, their future child, which we know now to be Christopher, is her family line that gives him the royal title of crown prince, not the current rule's namesake, of course. Now, in terms of actual drawing, I think that I wasn't feeling that good while I was making this picture. I had an easier time sketching her than I thought I would. Like, it didn't take me too long. I think I just had to shrink her down a little from the pencil sketch. But overall, I think that I wasn't feeling good at all. I must have been cold or something, and I just couldn't wait to be done. More so because of the recording aspect of the videos rather than actually making the picture. Like, I don't know if anybody has this during Inktober. If you record videos for either other platforms or just even the ones that I'm going to put here on YouTube, I'm like, it takes so long to set everything up that sometimes I'm just like, my goodness, when is this going to end? It just continues to go on and on and on and on, and then I'm like thinking that I'm finally going to be able to finish the picture, and then I don't. The background was a little bit of a challenge as well. That's why I didn't bother recording many of the backgrounds this week like I did the past 2 weeks, just because I had to figure out the color palette and one that would actually work well and one that would work well with the lore of the characters as well, because in this case, this is supposed to be a room that comes back in the story many times because it is supposed to be the room that will then be passed down to Christopher, as in his royal chamber. And it's technically not the safest royal chamber. It's just on the first floor, or like the ground floor of the palace, and it is very close to the beach. Now, this is a secluded part of the beach. It's not exposed or anything, but it is also true that the current rule really doesn't care if it were exposed. So I was trying to just make everything make sense, and I had to look up a bunch of pictures of coastal rooms and the way that they would look out of windows and how it would look without it being too conveniently placed, and for the height of the sea and the rocks to be correct. And so it took a little bit. It took a little bit for everything to go right into place, but I do like it. I'm not sure if this is my favorite picture of the week. I'm trying to look at my prompt list right now so I can see what comes next. But it is incredibly interesting to see all of the ones come there. But no, I do believe that this is my favorite one. But we're gonna see together if you believe that the other ones are on the same level as this, or if they're even better. And now we are going to day 22, Protect. In this case, I am actually drawing Prince Christopher of Ilvacar, who is indeed the little baby that was in the Queen's belly in the previous picture. Of course, you can see here that he is an adult or a young adult, and he is actually wandering somewhere. Now, this picture actually came about because of something I figured out for the lore of the story. In case you aren't familiar, we plan on making all of these stories into novels, or at least volume serialized novels. And so I was working on the outline of the first volume of the novel, and as I was working on it, I was thinking about the one part towards the end of volume 1, and there is a specific scene in that where Prince Christopher of Ilvacar, who is the character that you are seeing on the screen, is actually wandering through the enchanted forest of Halera. However, I'm going to say something really quick. The prompt was Protect because it is day 22, and double-digit numbers, so 2, 2, 3, 3, 1, 1, all of these are particularly important to the culture of the Empire of Shasan, which is another kingdom within the realm of Esmeralda that Candiii and I have. And within that kingdom are some other characters that interact with Christopher, one of them being the most important because it then naturally becomes his beloved husband and vicar, Sin. And because Sin is extremely protective of Christopher, Candiii and I were like, okay, let's just put 22 for protect. And in that way, we could probably draw both of us, Christopher and Sin. And we did just that. But originally, it wasn't going to be this scene in particular. That was because I knew I was going to draw Chris and Sin, but I didn't know exactly what scene I was going to go for. And as I was figuring out part of the lore and part of the story elements, Candiii and I started talking about this scene in which Prince Christopher goes to Halera for a political voyage, like it's a political visit that he has to go and do in the kingdom of Halera, which is a bordering and neighboring kingdom. And there, within the borders of Halera, is a very dangerous place known as the Enchanted Forest. And this forest is filled with dangers of all kinds. It is extremely hard to get in and out of. And for that reason, though Christopher has been in Halera before, when he was younger, the princess, the current ruler of Halera, so Princess Idelgard, and her brother Prince Terence, whom is very close friends with Christopher, tell him to please go into the forest with a small group of soldiers. However, as Christopher is walking through the forest, he is ambushed by a few bandits, and as he is fighting them off and fending them off, he sees this very large beast that you can see in the background of the picture that seems to be ready to protect him and seems to be there to offer him aid and help. Now, the other guards that were around Prince Christopher actually just, is it a word to say that they just scram and run away? But they run away, basically, and Christopher ends up seeing this beast in the depths of the forest. So once he realizes that the beast, which, by the way, if you could not tell, is designed by Candiii, looks insane, amazing, absolutely love the design for him. So once the guards have left and Christopher is left to his own devices, basically, he decides to approach the beast, as one does, because Christopher is actually very fond of animals. He thinks all animals are super cute. He can't help himself, and so he decides to approach said beast. And the beast is actually extremely friendly towards Christopher and seems to chirp when he sees him, and the interaction is actually very cute and sweet. Now, Christopher does believe that this beast is somewhat similar to something that he's seen before, that there's something in the gaze that he thinks is similar to something he's seen before, but he can't quite catch it just yet. And of course it will be later revealed that this is Sin, so his future vicar and then his future husband, because within the realm of Esmeralda there is a taboo thing, because I will say that this is not a typical ability that most people have. It is obviously a universe where magic exists and where auras exist, so there are elements of magic bits within the story, but it is taboo to be able to shift into a beast form such as this. So Christopher has no idea that this is actually Sin doing this or trying to protect him as much as he is. But as soon as he finds out, he is absolutely taken aback and really cannot believe it, but can at the same time. But as we were discussing it, Candiii was just telling me that for how protective Sin is of Christopher, he absolutely would just go around and follow him if necessary to protect him, especially if other soldiers wouldn't. And that is where this picture originated from. I just wanted to draw this scene because I thought it was absolutely adorable and I couldn't miss the chance. is day 23, Distortion. Now, this one was a little bit harder to come up with a composition and an idea because, first of all, I do remember that I had a terrible day on this day in terms of work, in terms of all things related to all sorts of boring things that I will not be listing here. So I just didn't really feel like drawing too much. I didn't feel like recording, and it was, I think you can tell that it was a pretty terrible day from the quality of the picture itself. It isn't terrible by any means, like it could be way worse, but I do believe you can tell that I was kind of not really into it. I think I was just extremely tired as well. This month has been really hard on me, not necessarily for the Inktober, but just in general, there have been a lot of news and commitments and a lot of pressure on me that I will not be sharing here, but that are important, significant, and so, you know, it's just been a lot. There are some days where I am just more tired than others, and I just decided to draw something simple, I guess. I wanted to draw the moment in which D'Artagnan Hamilton, which is the character you're seeing me draw on the screen right now, decides to become a fiend. Now, remember when I said in the first picture with Lunia that the ability that he has usually comes with a fiend that helps them somewhat control? Well, helps them if they are rather powerful, because otherwise it just causes more pain than anything else. Well, that fiend is usually born from a real human being who forms a contract with a divine being. It could be a divine being of the underworld, it could be a divine being of the heavens, it could be from anywhere. And D'Artagnan actually does have this contract with a divine being and turns into a fiend. So from a human that we can see in this picture, born during the 10th century AD, he actually becomes a fiend. And this is actually because the area, the region where he is originally from, was destroyed by a local attack, basically a local invasion, and he loses his girlfriend, or rather the girl that he wants to pursue, because they aren't technically a couple as of yet. And he finds refuge in one of the old sanctuaries that are in the village, in the city, and he is of course devastated and heartbroken. There are other pictures I have drawn of D'Artagnan when he basically sees the fire that takes over the village and the monastery where they wished to send the girl that he wished to pursue. If I am able to, I will be putting them on the screen. Otherwise, you'll just have to take my word for it that I have drawn it before. But I had never drawn the actual exchange of the quote-unquote contract between him and the divine being that ends up giving him the status of fiend. So I wanted to draw just that. In terms of the art in this, again, I really don't feel that convinced about it. I do draw all of my pictures on paper, like I said, and I do believe that the pencil lines are a little bit rough on this, especially because most of my pencils haven't been working. Like, I need to get a good sturdy mechanical pencil, which I don't know if this is just the case. I am not really that heavy-handed with my mechanical pencils, but as of late, the nibs just start breaking and breaking and breaking, and I'm trying to not have that happen, but I really don't know what else I could be doing to prevent that. Or they are so stiff and plasticky for some reason that like they just don't glide on the paper, and it's not nice to draw with them, and then I have to do more than one line, which of course makes it look jaggedy and kind of sketchy. Regardless of that, I do like the vibe of this picture. I like that I added the silhouette of the divine being in the background, but I really do think that it could have been pushed. There could have been something more interesting. Maybe I could have added statues in the background, or like pieces of statues of deities or whatever, but I just couldn't push it any more than I had. I was already going pretty slow as it was, and I didn't want to do too much that I couldn't then deal with, like put too many things on my plate so that it basically wouldn't have turned out even remotely decent, I guess was my main point. I wanted it to look nice. but I wasn't mentally able to do too much more than this, I suppose. Fun fact about the fiends, and this includes D'Artagnan, is that they tend to change shapes when they attach themselves to a specific person. And so whenever you see Candiii, or even whenever I do it, whenever you see us draw the small little chubby being that is in pictures with Lessa and Deyun most of the time, that is actually this man. It's D'Artagnan in his small chubby like shape that is shaped like that because he can take the form of whatever it is that his host draws him as. So when Lessa was a child, he drew D'Artagnan in that small, chubby, almost mascot-y type of way, and that is how he usually presents himself when he is trying to be inconspicuous and small. I guess in a way he almost looks like a little keychain. He doesn't show up as a keychain. He usually just rests on the top of Lessa's head, or more so Deyun's head. I feel like he's been doing that a lot more. But that is why he appears in different ways, and if you've seen descriptions of our posts, you're like, huh, that name seems familiar. That's mostly why. He has 3 main forms, and again, it changes depending on the host that he's attached to. He has a human type form, which is his own. He has a form that he takes based on the person that he's attached to and who they want to see the most. And then he has a being type of form, so a non-corporeal type of strange, eerie form that can be both very large, intimidating, and, you know, very scary, and one that is mini, tiny, that is usually based on the way that the host represents him. So both the bigger one and the one where he's mini are based on the way that his hosts actually reinterpret and see him, and then he just bases himself to the shape accordingly and makes himself bigger, smaller, whatever it is that he needs to be. Now we're going on to day 24, secrets. Now, this picture is actually a fairly simple picture, but I am quite happy with it. I think I'd put it right on the second spot, right after the Fate one, so number 21. This one features another character that many of you who have been around the channel for a while, I know that there's not that many at the moment, but I'm saying if anybody ends up seeing me in their notifications and they're like, oh my goodness, it's that girl from 2016. Yes, that's me. But if any of you have been around through the years on this channel, or even just on my DeviantArt or Instagram, you will recognize her because this is Dahlia, and she is one of the most antagonistic character within the series. Now, the series I used to have back in the day, so the draft for the beginning of this entire multi-layered, multi-universe thing that I then began sharing with Candiii, was called Dust and Sins. And if anybody remembers it, that followed a group of 6 teenagers, right? I think 6, that were all somewhat thrown into a very strange series of events. Now, it all started as a typical young adult story of romance and intrigue, because basically Dahlia, which is the girl you're seeing here, moved to a new school. She started meeting new people and began having different relations with different people within the new school. So she met Frederick and Fabrizio and Lessa and Dunia and all of these characters. Now, the thing is, part of that is still in place because different stories and different elements that are of course placed within each stories are now put into the multi-layered multi-universe that we have created, and she still has that plot. She still moves in from a different school and she meets the people from the school that she moves to, but it is now a lot more faceted. She is in more than just one story. She appears in more than just one plot and more than just one storytelling line. And of course, this is different because in Dust and Sin, everything then moved towards something really dark and heavy and eerie, and things were not as they seemed. In fact, it was more so a dark, high fantasy, kind of camouflaged as a contemporary type of novel, contemporary thriller, I suppose, whereas now she is just chaos incarnate. She is incredibly harsh on everybody around her, and she is also incredibly cruel. Still, I wanted to draw her in the school uniform that is typical of the school in Dust and Sins, so the, for my own sake, iconic quote-unquote green jacket that has been around for so long, and I'll probably put a picture of it, but like in the iconic school uniform that Frederick wears and that everybody else wears, because in my opinion, this scene takes place after something horrible happens with Frederick and those characters, so him and Fabrizio and Solomon. She was not around Frederick for too long, to be fair, but within the woods that are next to the school and next to the hospital, because unfortunately the scene would be taking place in the hospital, she emerges from the fog and from the depths of the trees, and she slowly approaches the entrance where she meets two of Frederick's closest friends, in this case Fabrizio and Solomon, and asks if she can see him. Of course, this is something very strange and eerie, because why would you just appear from the midst of the fog and ask to see somebody who hasn't talked about you and who doesn't necessarily get along with you too well? Of course, you could argue that everybody can have a chance to redeem themselves and speak to others and do better, but this really isn't the case. They hadn't had any way of fixing their relation. They were still somewhat in conflict with one another, both Frederick and her, and so her showing up to just talk to him is eerie and weird in itself. So it is clear to everyone that she is hiding secrets behind the scenes and that she is orchestrating something that the characters just cannot understand. Now, it is true that back in the day, through the original story, she tried to make herself look like a victim. This was always a plot point in the original plot written out idea, especially pardon me, especially when it came to Fabrizio. She always tried to egg him on and have him be upset to the point of explosion, just so that she could then blame it on him. Like if he ever said a word that was too harsh, or if he ever said too much, or if he ended up offending her, which of course we don't condone, but like they are teenagers, so it is normal sometimes to have emotions that are very high, especially at high stakes, in what we believe are high stakes during adolescence. And she was always trying to make it seem like he was the one exaggerating about her because he merely didn't like her. And this is true to an extent, as in Fabrizio does not like her, but I believe it's due to good reason. She definitely attaches herself to Frederick and their friend group a little bit like a leech, and she tries to make them believe things that have never happened, so distorting their ideas and somewhat manipulating the narrative so it fits what she wants and wishes, which is exactly what Fabrizio goes against. And so the two of them are very at odds with each other, but it is pretty clear from the beginning that she is trying to separate the two of them. So though everybody else at first, and more so in the original plot point, was trying to get him to stop being harsh on her because it was probably all in his head, it becomes slowly a lot more clear now that he is actually not just a jealous teenager and that he has some points, because she is just weird in some instances. She is just weird and she shouldn't be trusted as he thinks. I think a great addition to this story was just the fact that Solomon, whom Candiii originally made, and also whom was in Happiness Is You, which is a webcomic that we are also reworking and that we worked on. a few years back, is now added as one of Fred and Fab's closest friends. And so the fact that he shows Fabrizio the support he needs, and the fact that he is just, you know, not insane in believing that she is very creepy and does things in ways that are strange at best, does help with the narrative, and it really helps Fabrizio kind of calming down in a way, because he doesn't really know how to handle the situation, but at least he has also an older brother now, and he has Solomon to kind of like rely on to see that he is not just delusional and that there are things that are really weird that have been happening ever since she's appeared. Now, in terms of the art, like I said, I like the picture, but I really love the effect I was able to get with her eyes. I feel like in the full picture, like once I added her hair color, it kind of doesn't hit in the same way. I guess, you know, it might just be the fact that when you zoom out like this, it kind of almost loses the spark that it has. But I do believe that the effect on the eyes, especially when zoomed in, is really nice. I think it brings the picture together. What I was trying to do was bring the color of the background within the foreground color, so in the color of the character, and I think I was able to do that. So I am very happy with how this picture turned out in the end, and I'm really curious to see if you guys like it too. Now we're going on to day 25, which is Ray. I know it seems like a strange pick for the prompt, but I wanted to draw Orif and Daniel, whom you've seen in this challenge before in week 1. I drew them together for day 5. Unfortunately, it was the only TikTok that I didn't end up recording like the full length for YouTube, so it's the only one that doesn't have a more in-depth video like these ones. But I did talk about little Orif in the past video, so in the video right before this one, and basically I wanted to draw a little follow-up between the two pictures that I did of small Orif and adult Orif in video 3 and the first one that I did in video 1 of him and Daniel at the cafe together. Now, this one is actually a picture of adult Orif and baby Daniel. He is around 4 or 5 in this picture, and the two of them are walking together through the streets of the embassy of Lahirst. Now, for reasons that I just won't really go into in this video right now, because it would just take too long and I would have to pull out a whole spreadsheet and try to explain the lore, let's just say that in the realm and world that they are in, a lot of cities are built underground, and this is for people's safety, especially in the country that they are in at the moment. And of course, this doesn't allow the sunlight to filter through. Of course, for this reason, they have these very large and very tall lampposts that have artificial light that tends to shine on the streets in a warm tone, so that people have the illusion and the idea of receiving light. And this is exactly what I was trying to show in this picture. I wanted to portray the ray of light that the lampshade is basically presenting to them, but I also wanted to show that the light in itself was shining exactly on top of the two of them. Now, these two are actually a very soft duo of characters because, like I said, Orif is Daniel's blood uncle. He is his mom's older sister, and Daniel is of course his nephew, who he ends up loving and caring for as if he were his only child, basically. He treats him like his son, and he sees him as a son because he doesn't even really have children of his own. He mostly just dedicates himself to Daniel, especially after his sister, so Daniel's mother, unfortunately passes away. He becomes Daniel's sole guardian and parental figure. So for this very reason, I wanted to show the two of them doing something that is fairly normal, which is just, walking down a street, while at the same time also creating something a little bit more symbolic. The two of them are walking under the light, and this symbolizes the two of them standing together through adversity as things seem to turn for the worst in their life. They both lose someone that is extremely important to them, and they also have to face this trauma both on their own and together. This is because Orif has already experiencing losing a parent at a very young age when he was 16, and he also has had a lot of conflict with his mother. And so for this very reason, I think that he tries extra hard to try and help Daniel still feel like his mother is there for him while also being there for him himself. He also seems to be struggling with an inferiority complex in that sense. Like, he understands that he will never be who his sister was, and while this is obviously understandable, he needs a little bit to realize that Daniel doesn't just see him as a substitution of who his mother was, but he absolutely adores him and loves him dearly. Though they do have a little bit of a rift during Daniel's adolescence, mostly because Daniel is extremely stubborn, and though they agree fundamentally on ideas and thoughts, they kind of disagree on how to reach certain goals or how to get to certain points in life. And for that very reason, they seem to clash on little things, which then bring them to fight, which then makes them stay a little bit away from each other, and so on and so forth, which is typical of teenage life and adolescence, I would say. But of course, it doesn't make it any less painful, especially on Orif's part, who seems to be struggling so much with the idea of not doing enough for Daniel, when in reality he really doesn't need to do anything else, and Daniel loves him no matter what. So I think I really like their dynamic because they begin walking together because he meets Daniel when he's 4 or 5, and then they go their separate ways a little while still walking in the same path. So they are walking, just not hand in hand. And then when Daniel reaches adulthood and he starts to see things from Orif's point of view, and Orif too begins to see things in the way Daniel wanted them to be seen as, then the two of them slowly come together and they hold hands again, or just hold onto each other's arms and walk again under the same light and onto the same path, which I believe symbolically is one of the cutest things that they could possibly be doing. And I have a really soft spot for these two characters, so I think it's absolutely adorable that they find each other again and that they begin to grow closer as they used to be when Daniel was a little boy, especially because Daniel is extremely fond of Orif and he worries a lot about him. Even when he gets a little older, he is always worried about feeding him sugar-free things because he's afraid of Orif not taking care of himself, and so on and so forth. As per the artistic value of this picture, I do believe it's one of my weaker backgrounds. But on this day specifically, I remember I was just having a horrible day. Well, I say this day specifically, but just on the 25th, I was having a pretty terrible day overall. And just as a whole, things were not going well, and for that very reason, I tried to stay as calm as possible. But I remember that I started finishing part of this picture while I was waiting. I had finished my work day, but I had to wait for people to leave because obviously when you work in services, you sometimes have to wait for people to leave even though you're past your work time. So I was starting to do it with my mouse pad and I was trying to get ahead of it, and then all the time that it takes to set up again and everything else. So I was absolutely destroyed by the time I got to finishing this. So it's definitely not the best picture, but I do really like the vibe of it and I do really like the meaning behind it, and I hope you guys do too. But overall, I think that we are getting to the end of this week's Inktober video. I hope that you all will be enjoying the slideshow that I will put at the end, and I will be seeing you next week for the very last slideshow and for the very last commentary of this year's Cattober. I cannot believe that I am saying this. Hopefully in November I will be able to put out more videos because I'd love to do so, and I will be seeing you super soon. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I am sending you big hugs and big kisses, and I hope that you will have a great day, morning, evening, or night wherever you are in the world, and I will see you next time. Have a great day.